Started?
Yeah.
Actual Karen. Okay, Boomer here. Congratulations, Senator Kamala Harris. The history books I had back in the 50s and 60s rarely mentioned women of any color. Somewhere I have my 8th grade history book, and it devotes about 3 paragraphs to women's suffrage, and it describes slaves as well taken care of, and they sang a lot. There were always black women in the movement, like Harriet Tubman, but they could not be allowed to lead. The excuse that was given was that Southern women were needed to get Southern congressmen and legislators to be on board. Elizabeth Cady Stanton was one of the women who organized the Women's Rights Convention in Seneca Falls, New York in 1848. She began with, "We are assembled to protest against a form of government existing without the consent of the governed, to declare our right to be free as men are free, to be represented in the government which we are taxed to support, to have such disgraceful laws as give man the power to chastise and imprison his wife, to take the wages that she earns and the property which she inherits, and in case of separation, the children of her love." When she asked to include the right to vote, most of the 300 attendees, men and women, thought she was crazy. The only one that defended her was Frederick Douglass. Elizabeth did most of the writing, and Susan B. Anthony did most of the speaking and nearly all of the traveling, because Elizabeth kept having babies, 7. The kids called her Aunt Susan. Susan was one of the first to register, and she did vote. She was arrested, and when she went to trial, women were not allowed to testify or be on juries. The judge asked if she had anything to say. She had a lot to say and refused to pay the fines. She never married and said, "I never felt I could give up my life of freedom to become a man's housekeeper. When I was young, if a girl married poverty, she became a drudge. If she married wealth, she became a doll. Had I married at 21, I would have been either a drudge or a doll for 55 years. Think of it." There was a split in the women's movement over who should get rights first. Most of the members were abolitionists, and it was decided that the women should wait. You can learn a lot more about this from Ken Burns' documentary, Not for Ourselves Alone. Then the women's movement split again over activism and how to push for the vote. Alice Paul and Lucy Burns began the National Women's Party, and it was led entirely by women. During World War I, some believed that they should stop the movement like they did for the Civil War, but when they did, they lost a lot of the rights they had gained. They had parades with Inez Milholland leading on a white horse. She died of pernicious anemia, which she knew that she had while on a cross-country crusade for rights. Black women were supposed to be in the back of the parade, but Ida B. Wells and her group refused. She was born into slavery in 1862 and lost both parents and a brother to yellow fever when she was 16. She kept the family together and became an investigative reporter. She started her own newspaper, the Memphis Free Speech and Headlight, and began documenting lynchings. The Klan destroyed her presses, but she kept on. She believed the way to right wrongs is to turn the light of truth upon them. This is why we need to continue filming the wrongs. They also began the silent sentinels at the White House. They picketed every day from January 18, 1917 to June 1919, no matter the weather. They used President Wilson's words demanding freedom in Europe during the war against him. 172 women were arrested and some spent months in jail. Lucy Burns was one of the first, and she told the judge that every day there would be more protesters and no fines would be paid. Because she demanded they be treated like political prisoners, she was hung by her wrists with her toes barely touching the ground. When Alice Paul was arrested, she began a hunger strike. They sent a psychiatrist to find out if she was mentally ill. There's a scene in the HBO movie Iron Jawed Angels where the doctor is telling Wilson's men that Alice had used the quote, "Give me liberty or give me death," which caused one of them to say apples and oranges. The doctor replies, "Oranges and women are sometimes confused with courage." The 19th Amendment was passed by Congress on June 4, 1919, but was not ratified until April 18, 1920. Besides Ida B. Wells, the other women on my hat are all African American women that I am old enough to remember. Shirley Chisholm of New York was the first African American woman elected to Congress in 1968. She was the first African American to run for the presidential nomination of a major party. In 2015, she was posthumously awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by the first African American president, Barack Obama. She was a child of immigrants. Her father was from British Guiana and her mother from Barbados. Shirley said, "If they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair." And she also said, "Of my two handicaps, being female put many more obstacles in my path than being black." Representative Barbara Jordan is up there, and I knew her because she was from Houston, Texas. She was the first African American to be elected to the Texas State Senate since Reconstruction. She was the first Southern African American woman to be elected to Congress. Her voice is something you just can't forget. She's best known for her opening statement to the House Judiciary Committee on the Nixon impeachment. She said, "The imperative is to define what is right and do it." Senator Carol Moseley Braun of Illinois was the first African American woman to be elected to the Senate. She was one of the two women to break the Senate dress code and wear slacks. She and Senator Jesse Helms, racist of North Carolina, got into it over whether to renew the design patent for the Daughters of the Confederacy because it had a Confederate flag. She threatened to filibuster his bill until the room froze over. She said he got into an elevator with her and noticed her and started singing Dixie. Then he looked at Senator Hatch of Utah and said, "I'm going to make her cry. I'm going to sing Dixie until she cries." She didn't. She replied, "Senator Helms, your singing would make me cry even if you sang Rock of Ages." The only woman on my hat that I actually knew was the mother of Oklahoma civil rights, Clara Luper. The day Robin turned 18, I took her to register to vote and to the Oklahoma Freedom Center to meet Clara. Clara would ask you to donate $1 for every time she was arrested. 36. The street on the north side of the Capitol is now named for her. She was so happy to live to see the first African American president. When we lost her in 2011, she laid in state in the Oklahoma Capitol Rotunda. There's a picture of the first African American First Lady, Michelle Obama, and we hope she has a lot to say in the future and would like for her to run for office. There's a picture of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. When asked when there would be enough women on the Supreme Court, she said, "When there are 9. And now, the first woman vice president of the United States will be a woman of color and the child of immigrants. I really enjoyed watching Senator Kamala Harris question witnesses in the Senate, especially Attorney General Barr. Every line of my family goes back before the Civil War, and a lot of them own people. I could qualify, if I wanted, to the DAR, the Daughters of the Confederacy, and the Daughters of the Republic of Texas. But all I have to say is, girls, there is a lot more to be done. And